So earlier this morning, I wrote a newsletter, sent it out to everyone, subscribed to the newsletter, titled, "This wide receiver would make perfect sense for the Packers." So it came out yesterday that Rashee Rice, SMU wide receiver, met with the Packers. He posted it on his Instagram story, and every NFL team has 30 official visits where they can meet with prospects to see if they would fit in their system, see if they would be the kind of personality, the kind of person who would fit for the Packers in Green Bay. And so I want to go a little, dive deep into Rashee Rice and the idea of him potentially coming here in Green Bay. And he's someone that I've looked into a few different times throughout the offseason. I wrote about him in my Packers newsletter a few months ago because he does seem to be one of the receivers that sort of meets the height and weight thresholds that the Packers typically like to target. Guys who are usually at least around 6 feet tall, about 200 pounds. And if we look at Rashee Rice, he sort of fits that mold. He's about, I think, like 6'1", 204 pounds. And so when we look at the Packers, there's no doubt we need some more receiving weapons, or whether that's some tight ends, which I think we need, as well as receivers to add to this room right now. Still lots of second-year players. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Samori Toure, Bo Melton, who came from the Seahawks with a 7th-round draft pick last year. Lots of young players here in Green Bay, and I assume we will add some more here in this draft, and maybe the Packers will add Rashee Rice. So if we look at Rashee Rice, in his final season last year at SMU, he came in and completely dominated, had the third most receiving yards in the nation, the third most deep catches in the nation. He was top 10 in contested catches. He finished with 98 receptions for 1,355 yards, so he completely dominated last season. And now I want to read what PFF has to say about Rashee Rice. They say this: where he wins, ball skills. Rice's ability to adjust to the ball in the air is as good as it gets in this draft class. That's a necessary skill for someone who is not an elite athlete. What's his role? Possession receiver. It's no surprise that Rice saw insane volume this past fall, 156 targets. That's just the kind of receiver he is. He thrives as an intermediate route runner and in contested situations. Where he can improve, release package. Rice has all the makings of a chain mover except the bulletproof release package. If he can mix in some more physical releases, he can win consistently at the next level. While Rice's high end is debatable, he has a high floor and is one of the more NFL-ready receivers in this class. So the first thing I want to touch on after reading that is where PFF mentions that he's got great ball skills, but that it's a necessary skill for someone who is not an elite athlete. So if we look at Rashee Rice, he may not be the biggest guy when it comes to height and weight. If we look here at his RAS score, where you can see on the left side, height 6'1.5", basically, weight 204, and then on the right side for each of these measurements, it's basically the percentile. So 56th percentile height, 70th percentile weight, so not crazy in those areas. But then if we do look at some of his testing, for the 40, it wasn't crazy, 4.51 40, so he's not the quickest guy, but still, you don't need to have that elite speed like a Christian Watson, which is like a 4.36 40. Davante Adams had a 4.56 40, so he's slightly faster than Davante Adams, and we saw with Davante coming into Green Bay his first couple seasons, he didn't come in and just dominate right away. It took a few years of him developing himself, developing his route tree, his release packages, and PFF sort of seems to mention that if he can sort of work on those release packages more, that he can, be a consistently, likely successful receiver at the next level. But a few things I want to touch on I found super interesting is some of the areas where he is really, head and shoulders above most receiver prospects, forever. Vertical, 41 inches, which is in the 98th percentile, which is just crazy. And just to put that into perspective, Davante Adams' vertical was 39.5 inches. So what is that? A inch and a half more than Davante. And Justin Jefferson's vertical is 38.5 inches. So Rashee Rice has the ability to, be explosive when it comes to getting vertical. And I think that when you look at Jordan Love coming in, to be able to have a guy who can, jump up there with, the best of them, who has that ability to come down in contested catches, that's the kind of guy that Jordan Love needs on this offense. To be able to add a player like Rashee Rice with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs could really, I think, help Jordan Love, give him sort of a safety blanket where, let's say it's 3rd and 10, he needs to chunk it up to someone, hopefully, chunk it up to someone where you believe that they can go up and make the play. You sort of have that trust. Rashee Rice, I think, is that kind of guy, and maybe he doesn't come in right away and be the best that he can be. Obviously, he's going to take time to develop, but it seems like he has that ability to really become a monster in that area. And I feel like in the red zone, the Packers could use a weapon like Rashee Rice. And then one other thing, too. If we look at his 10-yard split, it is 1.49 seconds, which is in the 98.5% percentile, which shows just his ability to get off the line very quickly, which is obviously important. So overall, I think when you look at Rashee Rice, right now, many people have him as a second-round pick, potentially third-round pick. So this isn't a guy the Packers would need to spend their number 15 first-round pick on in this draft, so they could target another position. Whether that's a tight end, whether that's a edge rusher, they could use that first-round pick on that position, on whoever that could be, and then come into the second round and use their second-round pick on Rashee Rice, who I think has lots of upside, and as PFF said, they believe he has one of the highest floors of these receivers coming in. And so for the Packers offense that I think does need some more receiver help for Jordan Love, like immediately, Rashee Rice could come in and be that. And when we do look at Rashee Rice in his time in college, his season in 2021, he spent tons of time in the slot. If we look at his overall snaps, 317 of his 340 snaps were from the slot in 2021. But then in 2022, he was mainly playing outside. He had 81 slot snaps out of 469 total snaps. But we at least know he can get it done in the slot. So when we look at the Packers receiver room, Christian Watson, mainly an outside receiver. Romeo Doubs, mainly an outside receiver. And I think Rashee Rice is a player who seems like he could do both. So the Packers, if they wanted to get all three players on the field in 3 wide receiver sets, they could use Christian Watson outside, Romeo Doubs outside, then Rashee Rice in the slot. I think that I see no reason why they couldn't do that. I also read that he is a very physical blocker, which would be very nice, losing a talented blocker like Allen Lazard to have Rashee Rice come in and hopefully be able to, help the Packers in the run game could also be beneficial. So at least for me personally, after, looking into Rashee Rice and sort of seeing the kind of player he is, I really like the idea of picking him in round 2, maybe going tight end. If I could, do this draft myself as we get closer, this is what I'm thinking right now. If in round 1 we could go someone like a Dalton Kincaid, a tight end, or Darnell Washington, and then come in round 2 and get Rashee Rice, it would make this Packers offense look, pretty enticing to me, just to already have Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, who I think both can really take a huge step forward this next season, and then to have 2 other young, prospects in whoever could be a young tight end, a young wide receiver. I think that the future will be very bright for the Packers offense. We would have a great foundation of young players on rookie contracts, and if Jordan Love could start to build chemistry with them in 2023, 2024 could be a wild year if the Packers decide to, bolster up this receiver room, tight end room, and I think that Brian Gutekunst, this should be what he wants to do. Hopefully it is what he wants to do, and I know we still have needs on defense, and I wouldn't be angry if we took an edge rusher, but just when it comes to fun factor, I would love to see, a top line tight end receiver as well to just really give Jordan Love everything he needs to be successful. And I think Brian Gutekunst he's going to do whatever he thinks will lead to, this team being the best they can be. And I think that Jordan Love obviously needs to be great for this team to be great. And Brian Gutekunst knows this. He drafted Jordan Love. He moved up to pick him at the end of round 1 back in 2020. And his job pretty much hinges on Jordan Love being successful, most likely, because sometimes if your team, GM of a team, if they start struggling and not winning and things aren't working with the quarterback they picked, lots of times, people will come in, new GM will come in. And so while that won't necessarily happen with Brian Gutekunst if Jordan Love doesn't pan out, there is a higher likelihood of Brian Gutekunst not staying around in Green Bay if Jordan Love doesn't become a great receiver who can be a starter for years and years. So I see no reason why he wouldn't want to give Jordan Love everything he needs to be successful, and I think that needs to be a tight end receiver to add to this room that we currently have. And if you haven't subscribed to my Packers email newsletter, I'm starting to write a lot more there. So if you want to stay up to date with things there in your inbox, you can enter your email down below. The link should be right there. You can click it in the YouTube description of this video. Feel free to subscribe to that email. I appreciate all you guys who have done that, especially over the past couple of weeks. So thank you for that. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.